Welcome, leaders, to this explainer. Look, if you're in a position of leadership, you already know the deal. Managing a team, a project, or a whole organization, it's demanding. But honestly, often the absolute hardest thing to manage isn't some massive external crisis. No, it's your own internal dialogue on a really difficult day. Think about it. When the pressure mounts, how do you talk to yourself? Today, I want to introduce you to a systemic tool designed exactly for those high-stress moments. It's called the BLAQ framework, and it is going to completely change how you master your mindset. We're talking about shifting you out of that defensive crouch and putting you back into a position of total command. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a clear roadmap today, based on an incredibly logical four-letter acronym to transform your leadership mindset. First, we'll cover the core shift from reaction to direction. Then, we hit the BLAQ framework itself. Become your future, list your needs, apply real evidence, and question with ask-formations. Finally, we'll wrap up with a 30-day commitment to really lock it all in. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, shifting from reaction to direction. Before we even get to the acronym, we gotta talk about those high-pressure moments. You know the ones. A major deal suddenly falls through, a key employee resigns out of nowhere, or a high-stakes presentation just goes totally sideways. These situations are the universal struggle of leadership, and your brain just goes into absolute overdrive. So I want you to pause for a second and really reflect on this. How are you speaking to yourself on a hard day? Is your internal monologue supportive and strategic, or is it chaotic and passive? For most of us, when things get tough, we just allow these unchecked negative inputs to completely flood our minds. We basically hand the microphone over to our inner critic. And that brings us to the core through line of this whole explainer, moving from reaction to direction. Reaction is exactly what we just described, right? It's noticing that unhelpful internal input and just letting it wash over you. Direction, on the other hand, is active. It's noticing that unhelpful input and then actively adjusting it using the BLAQ framework. Why? So you can follow through with one single, finishable action. You are literally taking the steering wheel back from your subconscious. Now, as we make this shift, you absolutely have to internalize this crucial rule. Confidence follows the process. It doesn't have to come first. I mean, let that sink in for a second. So many leaders wait to feel confident before they act. They think they need to somehow banish all self-doubt before making a tough call. But this framework totally flips that script. You don't need to feel completely confident to start. You just need to execute the process without over-evaluating everything. The confidence, that's the reward that comes after you take action. Moving right along to Section 2, B for Become. Think of this step like a strategic, improvisational rehearsal for the leader you are evolving into. Instead of focusing on your current stressed-out state, actively visualize your future self in a real-world scenario. Now, what's really interesting about this is how physical it can be. How does future you enter a room? Do they rush in, frantically checking their phone, apologizing for being late? Or do they walk in with their shoulders back, making solid eye contact, carrying this great sense of calm authority? By defining this, you're giving yourself a concrete behavioral template to step right into. Let's take it a step further with this prompt. What does confident you actually sound like? When you're under pressure, do you start speaking quickly? Do you use a ton of filler words? Confident you probably speaks a little slower, uses pauses effectively, asks really decisive questions. This become stage forces you to practice being the exact version of yourself you want to project. You are essentially acting the part until the process generates that real confidence we talked about earlier. All right, that brings us to Section 3, L for list your needs. Here's the thing. You simply cannot sustain the future you we just envisioned if your environment is constantly working against you. It needs structural support. To fix this, we use this brilliant flexible category scaffold called ABCD: atmospheres, behaviors, conversations, daily habits, and environments. As a leader, what specific atmospheres do you need to do your deep work? What behaviors do you need to model for your team? What conversations absolutely must happen? Or maybe, which ones do you need to avoid? What daily habits keep you grounded? What physical environments spark your best thinking? You list these out. And the beauty of this scaffold is how adaptable it is. You could literally spend 5 minutes jotting down one need per category, or you could spend an hour building out a massive comprehensive plan. Let's move to Section 4, A for Apply Real Evidence. So once you know who you're becoming and what you need, you have to prove to your brain that this is actually possible. And you do that through evidence, not fantasy. Notice the contrast here between pattern recognition and mere manifestation. We aren't just closing our eyes and hoping for success. Actually, scratch that. It's more like we're doing the exact opposite. Building your identity is a rigorous act of data collection. You look for real-world evidence that supports the confident leader you are becoming. This could be past memories of when you absolutely crushed a presentation. It could be specific books, a piece of music that completely shifts your state of mind, quotes you anchor to, or role models whose behaviors you study. You are actively gathering real intelligence to prove to your inner critic that, yes, you definitely have what it takes.
Next up is Section 5, Q for question with affirmations.
Okay, this is the ultimate pivot that makes this entire BLAQ strategy work. Ask-formations. What are they? It's a technique where you replace traditional declarative statements with targeted questions. And you can use these across literally any area where you need a mental shift. Maybe that's general confidence, maybe it's finding internal peace amidst a totally chaotic project, or even AI confidence as you adapt to crazy new technologies in your industry. The goal is always the same: prompt a positive outcome by fundamentally changing how your brain processes the input. So the crucial point is the psychology behind why this works, and it's honestly fascinating. Statements trigger resistance. Think about it. If you're having a terrible day and you tell yourself, "I am a flawless leader," your brain immediately argues back. It goes, "No, you aren't. You totally botched that client call an hour ago." Questions, however, trigger search behavior. If instead you ask yourself, "How can I show up as an effective leader in my next meeting?" your brain stops resisting. It starts hunting for solutions. It immediately starts answering the prompt. You are literally hacking your mind's natural problem-solving mechanics. It's a real game changer.
And finally, Section 6, the 30-day commitment.
The BLAQ framework is incredibly powerful, but only if you move it from theory into actionable direction. So I'm challenging you to anchor this framework into your daily life starting right now. Here are the steps. First, commit to just one ask affirmation for the next 30 days. Pick a question that triggers the exact search behavior you need most right now. Second, physically write it down on a piece of paper and photograph it. And third, set that photo as the wallpaper on your phone. The average person looks at their phone nearly 100 times a day. You're going to use that habit to repeatedly prompt your brain with a powerful, direction-shifting question. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with this really provocative final thought directly from our source material. Your mind is listening to your prompts. Learn to ask questions that move it forward. As a leader, you're constantly prompting your team, right? You give them directions, you ask them questions to guide their work. It is absolutely time you started doing the exact same thing for yourself. The next time you face a hard day, don't just react. Run the BLAQ framework, take direction, and ask the question that changes everything. So what ask-formation are you going to commit to for the next 30 days? Start your commitment today and see where it takes you.